Alrighty, folks, thanks for joining us today for our talk on the SBIR and STTR programs and why they actually matter to entrepreneurs. I'm going to give a real quick webinar presentation here, really just to talk about these federal funding programs, why every small business and entrepreneur needs to know about these programs, and kind of some of the mechanisms for working through the programs. We're doing this in support of Global Entrepreneurship Week, which we actually do a lot for Arrowhead Center because we do run an entrepreneur development program. And we give a lot of assistance to small businesses across the region that are looking to take their idea to the next level, need a bit of innovative capital assistance, are working on a great idea and they need some technical assistance in any way that we can serve the community. That's what Arrowhead Center is all about. So today in the presentation, we're going to start off with kind of some of the reasoning of why the SBIR and STTR programs are great for a small business, what these programs actually are, some of the mechanisms for working through the programs, and then a little bit about the NMFAST program, which is actually what I work for and one of the programs we have here at Arrowhead Center. So the SBIR and STTR programs are really designed to actually move high-risk research from small businesses to the commercial marketplace. The entire impetus for these programs, and you can read the mission statement here, is to support scientific excellence and technological innovation through the investment of federal research funds and critical American priorities to build a strong national economy, one small business at a time. So really the entire purpose of these programs is to take what small businesses are working on that may be hard to actually receive normal levels of funding. So if you have an idea and it's one of the ones that you can walk into a bank and they'll immediately give you a loan for, it's not really what the SBIR programs are designed to do. They're designed to actually take those innovations, those really strange things that nobody may actually be aware of, nobody may know that you can actually do, or something that if you walked into a bank and said, hey, I need $150,000 to actually see if this idea works, that they would laugh you out of the bank or call security. So they're trying to actually use federal funding to divert a little bit of diversion, but not really, from normal research and development activities across a number of agencies so that they can actually see those innovations get to marketplace. So if anybody that's actually in a small business or owns one, you know that when it comes to innovative capital, there's really kind of three phases. That first phase of, I got this idea, let me see if it is actually going to work, let me actually test it out, let me see if I can get something going. Then you move into your phase two, which is that prototyping. You're building your market-ready product. You're getting ready to go. You're making sure everything works. You're making sure your supply lines are set up. Your distributors are around, that really you can actually produce a product. And then you have that third phase of actually going out there and selling it. Now, the gap between phase two and phase three is often called the valley of death. That's where a lot of businesses fail because they have a great idea, it seems like it's going to work, they design a prototype, and they just can't mass produce that prototype. They can't find that good market opportunity. Well, that's what these programs are designed to do, is to help bridge those gaps, to get over those valleys of death, and just to move that spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship across all of America. They do have a priority for assisting socially and economically disadvantaged or historically disadvantaged persons across the program. So there are some companion programs that help with that, but there are no specific set-asides for the SBIR and STTR programs. So really quick, just to also break down, you'll hear SBIR program a lot, or people will refer to it as the SBIR program. And it's an acronym, and there's kind of a couple of key phrases in there. The first one is a small business. So these programs are totally designed for small businesses. Actually, the only awardee under both of these programs, the main awardee, can be the small business. They will always control the contract. They will always control the IP. They will control what is being produced. The second part is innovation. So to be eligible for these programs, it has to be an innovative idea. So it can be a product, it can be a service, it can really be anything that is either pushing the boundary, doing something better. We'll actually talk about this a little bit more. And the R part, there has to be some research. So there has to be some kind of research capacity, research capability that's going on. It has to be something that you're not sure if it'll work, and so you need to find out. And then the STTR program, that's the Small Business Technology Transfer, and we'll get into the differences between the SBIR and STTR programs on a later slide. So really, when we talk about these programs, though, and why every small business should know about it, some of these logos here, most people will recognize. 23andMe, the DNA testing, that became huge. I think they even had a Super Bowl ad 2 Super Bowls ago. iRobot with the Roomba, if anybody has one of those small-scale automatic vacuum cleaners. Sonicare, your pulsing toothbrush. Even Qualcomm. All of these companies were founded through SBIR projects, because the company actually had an idea, they were trying to get something going, and they couldn't find normal level of funding. So they found SBIR opportunities, and their SBIR product actually turned into, for some of these, multi-billion-dollar vehicles for their company. A lot of these companies hire thousands of people, and it was all made possible by taking advantage of the SBIR program. So why should every small business be interested and every entrepreneur be interested in the federal funding programs? Well, one, the SBIR and STTR programs are considered government seed fund program. So anybody that knows about funding knows that you have seed fund, which is that kind of early stage funding cycle where you're really just testing the waters. You got an idea, you're not sure if it works. You have to actually make sure that that idea works before you can take something to market. And for a seed funder, the government under the SBIR and STTR programs is one of the largest funders out there. The other fact is it's risk-free dollars. So you don't have to pay it back. It's not a loan. You don't have to actually worry about paying someone later on and them taking part of the company. It's totally risk-free. Even if the idea fails, you don't have to pay the money back. And along those lines, it's non-dilutive funding. So there is no equity taken by the government for your business. Anybody that's ever sought venture capital will know that that's actually huge. So we'll get into a little bit more of the kind of nuance later, but just to cover it right now, with the SBIR and STTR programs, you kind of have a phased approach where you get a little bit of money just to see if your idea works. If you took your idea without any backup, with just barely a computational model to a venture capitalist and told them, I need $225,000 to make sure this works, you would either A, get laughed out of the building, or B, they would want 70% of your company. Well, the great thing about the government is they can give you, under some of the funding agencies, $225,000 just to see if your idea will work, and you don't have to give up any portion of your company whatsoever. Another big thing is the company retains the full data rights. So you will always have data rights to your idea. They're not going to actually sell the data. They're not going to give away the data. They're not going to give away your secrets. They just have to post information because it is federal dollars and it is public funding that they funded an idea, and they don't have to actually talk about what the idea was. They don't have to talk about the setup. You're not losing any of your intellectual property. And for any of the data that they have to actually publish, they won't disclose the data for at least 4 full years after the program's completion. So one of the things with that, though, is as you move through the different phases of the SBIR program, that 4-year clock actually resets. So if you've had 3 years of, or you got a phase 1 3 years ago, you're running out of time, all of a sudden you get another phase 1, that clock will continually reset, which is actually kind of key because they're never going to give any sort of information out while you have your data rights. And one of the biggest things that not a lot of people know about is through the SBIR and STTR programs, it actually gives you a priority position for sole source sales. Now, anyone that doesn't know what sole source is needs to really learn about that, because sole sourcing is a way for departments like the Department of Defense or NASA to immediately buy a product from a business without having to compete it. So what that means is typically what happens now is the Department of Defense needs to buy 300 drones that operate within a specific envelope. So they have to actually create an RFP, or usually they create an RFI, see who's working in the area, see what they have, see what capabilities people have. Then they'll create an RFP, they'll actually put it out for publication, they'll get in a whole bunch of applications for the RFP, and they'll have to actually comb through those, make sure that the business can deliver. They'll actually compete at small business versus large business. It doesn't really matter, and you never know what's going to happen. With the SBIR and STTR programs, though, as long as you're funded under one of those and you're trying to get a contract opportunity, they can skip all of that. If you have a product they want to buy, they don't have to actually compete or do an open competition for that product. So you're not competing against like the big guys, Raytheon, Honeywell, the ones that just because of economies of scale can cut their margins down to fractions of a cent, which is extremely huge for any small business that's interested in that government contracting. Another thing is you don't get any black marks for up to 75% failure rate. So unlike other business aspects, your idea can fail 75% of the time, and they are not going to give you a black mark. It's not like they're going to go, well, their last idea didn't work, we're not going to continue to fund them. You can continue to fail as long as you succeed some of the time. And so anytime you hear about these programs, you might hear about a lot of the myths that are out there. And we actually like to refer to these as the common myths. So one of the things is that the program will get somebody to market quickly. It is a federal funding program. It does work on the government schedule. Anybody that's worked for the government knows that it moves at a glacial pace at the best of opportunities. So you are looking at typically a 2 to 3 year cycle before you will actually be selling a product. If somebody comes to the SBIR program and says, I need to actually apply for this program, I want to be selling my product in the next 90 days. This isn't really going to be for you because there is a structure to go through. Another myth is that the program is the same across the board. So there are 12 agencies that fund under the SBIR program, 5 under the STTR program, and their packages, their funding levels, their requirements are vastly different between each one. So that's why one of the things is when you hear somebody talk about the SBIR program and they say, well, every agency does this, it's more than likely not the case. There's really only 2 constants under the SBIR and STTR programs. 1, the applier has to be a small business, and 2, there are 3 registrations you have to have. Everything else, as soon as you look at an individual agency, it kind of goes a little bit out the door. Another myth that a lot of people like to bandy about is it's too difficult, it's not worth the time, I'm just going to go for VC funding. When you look at the mechanisms of the SBIR program and what it requires and the funding levels that are available, it's actually a lot easier to put together a 15-page technical proposal for this program than it is to put a 30-page business plan and get it in front of some different VCs to try and get funding and give up a portion of your company to get that money. It's not actually even more work than what is typically required for an investment pitch. A lot of times it's a lot less work. So that's one of the things is people kind of think, well, it's just the government. They're not really going to fund my idea. They don't want what I'm doing. I'm going to go out there and try and find investment on my own. Sometimes it's a lot easier than actually making those connections and trying to work through those mechanisms yourself. And the last myth that gets kind of thrown out there by almost everyone is it's convoluted and there's no guidance. Well, one, yes, it can be a convoluted process. There's a lot of requirements that you have to know about, a lot of things that you have to do. But the big thing is there's programs like ours that actually give that guidance. There are programs out there that can give you all the assistance you need, except for writing the actual proposal, because you are the inventor. You know the innovation best because you're the one coming up with it. But besides that, there's guidance out there. There's resources, there's tools available, because there's a lot of organizations that just want to help develop businesses within their state, ours included. So the SBIR and STTR programs will actually help you get to commercialization. There's a great quote here by Ash Murrah. Life's too short to build something nobody wants. So if you're just doing research for research's sake, if you're building stuff because you think it's cool, you're probably not building a product that you will be able to sell. You may be the greatest salesman out there in the world, and you may be able to sell ice to Eskimos in Alaska, but you're probably not going to sell that product unless you have that capability. So it's really about finding those niches that you can actually move into and where your product fits. What's that customer pain point that you're going to be taking care of? How are you actually doing something different that the customer doesn't have currently and that they want? And the reason this is important is one of the guiding principles for the SBIR and STTR programs is commercial merit. Any of the innovations that are going forward before any of the agencies, when they're doing the review, they have to make sure that eventual product actually has commercial merit. If you're developing something that is, the greatest thing since sliced bread, but nobody out there is going to buy a product based off of it, you're probably not going to get funded. That's because the purpose of these programs is to actually grow that business. It's not just to get, strange things invented and to get, weird things through the IP process. It is actually so that businesses can be stood up off of these innovations. So one of the caveats with that is the government doesn't actually define how the product needs to be commercialized. It just needs to have that potential to be commercializable. So that means that even if you're only going to sell a handful of these, as long as it makes sense and as long as the business can capture that opportunity, you might have that commercial merit already taken care of in that commercial aspect. So there's two types of agencies that fund under the SBIR and STTR programs. One is a contracting agency and one is a granting agency. So for granting agencies like NSF, and we'll have a chart that actually goes through all the differences here, you have to find your potential customer. So when you're looking at that commercial aspect, when you're looking at who's going to be the person to buy your product at the very end, who are you going to sell that innovation to? How are you going to package it? How are you going to market it? NSF is not going to buy a product from you because they're just not in that business. They're in the business of pushing forward research and development for science. And that doesn't include buying stuff unless you're building a brand new desk that's going to solve all their problems. However, for a contracting agency, typically your end user actually will be the government agency. So for departments like Department of Defense, they're putting out ideas because they have a very specific problem they want to solve. That's why when you look at some of their areas that they fund under, they will be extremely, extremely, nuanced in what they're looking for and what you need to provide. We'll go into more detail about that in a little bit here. But one of the things that everybody needs to keep in mind, and this is actually starting to follow along with the typical way that investment pitches run, is that increasingly more agencies are actually focusing on commercial potential. And you'll actually start to find this a lot more in the future from some of the feedback we've gotten from program managers and agency representatives. For example, USDA is one of the agencies that funds under the SBIR program. And USDA funds once a year. So USDA's package used to include, sections about the facilities and equipment, how you're matching with their program priorities, what is your research capacity. USDA actually changed their proposal package quite a bit this year. It just closed in October, but they added an entire section about the commercial applications and commercial potential for your product. So you had to be able to provide to them where your customer is, what your market opportunity is, where you think you might sell your product, even what will be your product, at the end of this, three-phase cycle for selling something. How are you going to sell it? What's your distribution model going to be? Increasingly, those are questions that everyone is going to have to answer when they submit one of these opportunities, because the agencies have to show that the money they're investing is actually doing something to grow the capacity of businesses across the US. So you need to kind of start looking at, what is that market? Where am I going to go? How do I find that market? And there's programs out there that'll help you with that. We'll talk about the other programs at Arrowhead Center towards the end of this presentation. So the other key aspect with the SBIR and STTR programs is actually that innovation, the I in the acronym of SBIR. And so this is actually a great quote by Robert Metcalf. It says, "Invention is a flower, innovation is a weed." So invention is pretty. It's something that you're coming together, you think it's great, you're doing a lot of research, it happens organically, it just grows and turns out beautifully. Innovation a lot of times is ugly. It starts off with an idea, that idea doesn't work, you have to look at changing the idea, or you get halfway through building something and you go, well, that's never going to work, let me actually change it this way, let me go back to the starting board. You have to scrub it a lot, but eventually it actually grows. And the other way it's like a weed is, innovation can just sprout up overnight, but it can grow like wildfire. So you can have something that you have been through the messiest of processes and the ugliest of processes to get it to market, but it can be an overnight sensation. Going back to one of the earlier slides, look at something like iRobot and the Roomba. If you would have told somebody 25 years ago that you're going to be able to sell them a tiny vacuum cleaner that you can program to vacuum either certain portions of your house or your entire house, once a day, once a week, whatever you want to program it with, and you'll be able to actually just let it go and check it at night to make sure it did its job, people would think you're crazy. They would go, well, that's never going to work. But it works. There are millions of those things that are sold every single year, and people use them as Christmas gifts. They go, hey, this thing is cool. I thought about you. Why don't you give it a try? And so that's why innovation is it's more organic than that invention. It's meant to be messy. It's meant to be ugly, and it's meant to just be scrub brush until you can actually get it up and get it going, and then it explodes. But with the SBIR program and the STTR program, innovation doesn't necessarily mean high tech. So it doesn't mean this is something that I thought of watching an episode of Star Trek and it's only going to fit within the Federation in the year 2250. It's not just this is something that we'll be actually living with 50 years from now, but nobody can invent it for the next 40 years. Innovation can actually be really low tech. So if you have a novel way of doing something that's saving time, saving resources, saving money, that's actually innovation. So really, some low-tech processes or products can be considered innovative. So things like comic books for PTSD patients, that's actually innovative. It helps them cope with their PTSD. It shows them that there's others that suffer from that same maladies, same afflictions. It shows them how other people deal. It's actually proven to be a great therapeutic tool for PTSD patients. And it's not really high tech. Yes, it's innovative because you're actually applying a product in a new and different way. But comic books have been around forever. We've gone through the golden age, we've gone through the silver age. Comic books churn out movies every single year. Just look at the box office receipts for Marvel. But because you're taking something that's already been developed and you're actually flipping it, you're putting a new aspect to it, you're doing something different, you're changing it for a different audience, for a different purpose, that's actually innovative. And things like that can be funded under the SBIR and STTR programs. And the other big thing about innovation is it really comes in all shapes and forms. So innovation, it can be a product, so it can be something like iRobot or a comic book. It can be a service. It can be a new way to actually give people assistance for doing things like allowing them to manage their own healthcare, for giving them better data analytics, for allowing them to actually manipulate, market factors in their favor. And it can also be a process or a workflow. So it can just be a different way of doing something. It can be a way to save X percentage of time when you do a certain task across an entire industry. So that's actually innovation, because it is taking something that, even though it may seem old hat and it may seem just really dumb and low key, you're doing something new, you're doing something different, and you're changing things up. So that's why it can be innovation. And innovation can also start anywhere in the product idea or chain. It can start from the very foundational thoughts of an idea all the way to final manufacturing process. Innovation comes in all shapes and forms. If you have a business and you're not constantly doing your quality metrics for your product, you're not constantly looking at how can I actually, improve my process, how can I improve my product, you're really not doing innovation right, and you're not doing any favors for yourself, because that saves time, that saves resources, you actually get a better ROI on your products, and also it can lead you to new market opportunities. So one of the big things with innovation, though, is really don't miss the forest for the trees. One of the problems that we constantly have when clients come to us is they say, I've got this great idea. This is my very one specific product for my very one specific use for my very one specific customer. And they've laser sighted down on a very tiny fraction of the people that might be interested in the product. But then you start talking to them about it and you go, well, I see that you're doing this. How did you get there? What were your steps? How did you actually come up with this product? Or how are you coming up with this process? And what are you doing to make sure that it actually works right? And you'll get into a talk with somebody and they go, oh, well, yeah, I was thinking about this one day in the shower and I came up with this really interesting algorithm that nobody had. And, it does this and I get better performance out of, all of my data and my data analytics and looking at my opportunities. And you go, well, hang on, that's actually innovative in and of itself. So there could be ways that you're actually getting to your final product. There could be ways that you're developing your idea that are actually innovative, and they could be something someone's interested in funding. So think about your entire process, kind of take that 35,000 foot level view of your product and your process and start to go down from there, start to drill down and go, what am I doing at this phase? What am I doing at this phase? What am I doing at this step? Is this novel? Is this unique? Is this actually possibly a product if I think about it differently? So now that we've talked about the importance of the programs, let's go into a real quick overview of what they actually do. So the SBIR program supports R&D and financing of innovative technologies. So it has to be, again, some sort of novel aspect. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's new, but it has to be unique and it has to be novel. Again, like the comic book example, you can be taking something old hat and you can actually be changing it for a different audience. You can be improving upon it. You can be innovating on top of it. And that's something that they may be interested in funding. So when we look at by the numbers, the SBIR program, it's about a $2.5 billion annual set aside from the government, because it's 3.2% of the extramural research budget, which in fiscal year 17 was about 2.5 billion. Fiscal year 18, I think, was about 2.8. For all agencies with a budget greater than $100 million per year. So what that means is, and why extramural is one of the kind of important phrases here, is when you look at any of the federal agencies that are doing research and development, there's two different mechanisms they use. Intramural, which is actually them paying their own people to look at new and novel things, to actually try and come up with ideas, to try and build things. That's their intramural R&D. It's all internal. It's all their own people coming up with ideas and improving upon them. Extramural is the ones for them going out there and like awarding a contract or a grant to someone like a university, saying, hey, we're interested in this aspect, what's going on, what's out there in the marketplace. Here's $1 million for somebody to actually tell us about this thing. So any of that funding goes into a pool, and from that pool, they say, okay, well, 3.2% of this has to go into this, special program designed for small businesses. To date, there's been about 160,000 awards granted over the lifetime of the SBIR program, which the SBIR program has been around for over 20 years in one form or another. And it continues to grow every year. So as you can see here, in FY11, it was only 2.5% of the extramural research budget, and it's continuing to grow. So in FY12, it was 2.6, FY17, it was 3.2, and every year they do a set aside, and Congress looks at the budget. They look at what's going on. As long as the program is still functioning, they go, well, we should probably actually invest more into this. We should invest more into putting together jobs, putting together opportunities, and making sure that what we're doing and what we're seeking to actually fund can get out there. Now, the STTR program is a sister program designed to facilitate cooperative research and development between small businesses and research institutions. The original idea behind the STTR program was to take technologies off the shelf. So technologies and IP that was just sitting on a university shelf or sitting on a federal lab shelf like LANL or Sandia, are just sitting on someone's shelf that got research funding to actually come up with that idea. Because most universities, and speaking from a university, they're not interested in commercializing a technology. They're interested in doing research. So they come up with an idea, they actually do some of the first IP patents on it, or they do a lot of the research on it. Is it something that's novel? Is it unique? They come up with a computational model, everything works out great, and then it gets filed. It sits there on the shelf, nothing ever happens with it until a small business comes along and says, I can make a product out of that. So that was the original idea behind why the STTR program exists. It's changed slightly over the years. It's not necessarily just funding technology coming out of research institutions now, but the research institution has to be involved. So if you are looking at submitting either an SBIR or STTR and you want to do it 100% on your own as a small business, you cannot apply for the STTR program. There has to be some agreement between you and a research institution about taking a product to market. So the STTR program is a little bit less of a set aside. It's only 0.45% of the extramural research budget, but it's for agencies with a budget greater than $1 billion per year. So that's the big boys. That's a lot of the guys that are dumping just millions upon millions upon millions of dollars into a lot of different areas for R&D every single year. And it's about a $290 million set aside per year. So you can see that, for instance, last year it was $2.8 billion for the SBIR program. Last year for the STTR it was 290 million. So it's about a tenth of what it is, but there's a lot less agencies that actually participate. And this is the map of the participating agencies. So the ones in red actually operate under the SBIR program only, and the ones in gray have either an SBIR or an STTR. So somebody like Department of Agriculture, they are a granting agency. They're just interested in what's going on. They focus, very specifically on things like food production, food health, agriculture, innovation, precision agriculture. They're just looking at things that are going to help the state of food and ag across the U.S. Whereas someone like Department of Defense buys a lot of stuff every single year. And they have a very wide pool of things that they're looking to do. So Department of Defense can fund anything that's related to vehicle transport, that's related to fuel conservation, that's actually that human element, that human aspect of doing things like PTSD treatment, that's actually helping the health of soldiers and the warfighter. And because they fund across so many different things and because they're looking at so many different aspects, they have a lot more opportunities. So this is just a little bit more of a breakdown for the grants versus contracts. So when we talk about the difference between a grant and a contracting agency, So as you see on the right-hand side, granting agencies are agencies like NSF, the Department of Energy, and USDA. So those agencies are really focused on research and development. They're not going to buy anything. They just want to push forward the state of what's going on within their particular realm. So someone like Department of Energy is just interested in energy production, energy conservation, and renewable energy sources. So that's all they're looking at. If you come to them and say, well, I got this really great idea for doing things like a nanoparticle skin on a concrete piling, Department of Energy is probably not going to be interested in it. However, someone like NSF is. NSF has a much wider pool. They're just interested in any sort of science and research, any sort of development that's going on. That's why someone like NSF actually funds ideas that are just, I want to see what I can do with this material that's actually across material sciences. I think it has some really great applications in chemical energy. I want to see what I can do with it. And NSF goes, yeah, that sounds great. Here's money. Whereas contracting agencies are really trying to solve a very specific problem. So contracting agencies are ones like Department of Defense, where a Department of Defense has a lot of people out there in the field and they go, well, once we get 50 nautical miles off the coast of, this small island, we lose 5% satellite degradation on communications. We don't want to lose that 5%. So you have to actually come to them with an idea of how can I improve satellite communications? Can it be at the satellite level, the microsat satellite level? Can it actually be at the warfighter level? Can it be at the ship level? What can I do to help that? So just because they're a lot more limited in what they're funding doesn't mean that you can't approach it in a novel way, because they will look at that kind of, stem to stern of that idea and see where is that improvement? How can that improvement be taken forward? Can I improve upon it on all these different areas? And you'll find that across most of the contracting agencies is they are looking to solve a very specific problem. And that's why a lot of times the contracting agencies will be your eventual customer. When you're doing a SBIR under DoD, eventually somebody within DoD is actually going to want to buy that product, because that's why they actually put the call out there. They want to solve a very specific problem, and they need to solve it for the state of, the warfighter, or the state of, vehicles they have, or the state of their fleet. Whatever that problem is, they have a very specific usage for it. So some of the ways that grants and contracting agencies are different is, as I mentioned, granting agencies, they're a lot less specific in their topics. Someone like NSF, they just want to know what's going on in chemical engineering, or they want to know what's going on in geology, or they want to know what's going on in 3D fabrication. Are there new materials out there? Are there new processes for doing 3D printing? What's actually new in it? What's actually interesting? Whereas, again, contracting agencies are highly focused. They want to solve a problem. They want to actually put together a solution that they can eventually apply across their agency and across whatever their operational envelope is. Some of the other big ones that are different between a granting and contracting agency is granting agencies are a lot more flexible, again, because they're less specific, and you just have to do your best, essentially. You have to have your best efforts in research. And then with a contracting agency, you actually have a schedule, you have milestones, you have deliverables, and you only get paid on those deliverables and milestones. So when you're putting together your scope of work, make sure it's flexible enough that you can actually hit those requirements and on a specific schedule and get paid for it. And really, the government's going to define the scope of work on a contract because they are looking for that eventual product. One's not better than the other. They're just different aspects, and it depends on what you're actually putting together and who you want to sell the product to at the end. So the SBIR and STTR programs are a three-phase program. So phase one, again, is kind of that concept development. I have an idea, I need to see if it works. And the funding levels vary between the agencies. It can be anywhere from $100,000 to $225,000 over a 6 to 12 month period. A lot of people go, well, I can't even buy materials and equipment for that level, but you're not supposed to buy materials and equipment. You're actually just doing research. You're doing a problem-solving exercise essentially for your phase one. So phase two is the next phase. That's actually where you're developing that prototype, and you're developing a market-ready prototype. Now, the reason we say market-ready is the prototype that you come up with at the end of the phase two, they don't want duct tape and baling wire. They want it to actually be almost where you can stamp these out on a basis and go, okay, I have my market-ready prototype, I have my actual design philosophy, I know how these are going to be produced, I have all of my production capacity, I'm just going to start stamping these out. And it's a little bit more funding. So there's a lot wider range. It can go anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million over a 2-year period. And that's because a lot of people need to actually design that prototype. So you're looking at buying materials, you're looking at buying equipment, and you're doing a massive scale up a lot of times in your people, your workforce. And then phase three is that commercialization aspect. There's really limited direct funding. There's a new program actually started up by GSA, the General Services Administration, roughly about 2 years ago in conjunction with the SBA for them to provide very limited phase three funding. But really that phase three is you're trying to produce. So you're going out there and you're seeking other things like venture capital, or you're looking at other grant and contract opportunities. And that's why we say it's limited to direct funding, because there are companion programs to the SBIR and STTR programs that you might be able to capture. There are other grant and contracting opportunities that a lot of these agencies offer. So while there is no specific really phase three SBIR program, there's other programs that can help you get to market. So now we get into the nitty-gritty. Just like when you're creating a pitch deck or an investment deck, there's some requirements that you have to actually do. There's some things you have to create. The first thing you need to know is each one of these agencies has some sort of proposal that you have to put together. A lot of times these proposals require a technical narrative that's anywhere between 15 and 20 pages, and there will be forms to fill out. But first, you have to determine if you're eligible. So you have to be a for-profit business. You have to be a small business, which the actual definition for a small business is less than 500 employees. A lot of businesses out there are actually small businesses, because if you're hiring more than 500 people, you're doing a large business. You have your process already set up. You're already making money. And you have to be primarily U.S. owned. So 51% of the company has to be either owned or operated or controlled in some manner by U.S. citizens, permanent residents, whatever that designation is. So the second part is, are you developing an innovative idea? So are you actually pushing forward innovation? Is what you're looking at kind of new? Is it novel? Is it unique? Does it have that process where you're going, well, I'm taking something that's already created, but I'm putting a new spin on it. I had this innovation and I took this thing. It's not new, but here's a new use for it. So as long as it's answering that, you're probably developing innovation. If you're simply trying to get funding to actually move into a new market space from the same old product that you've already sold, probably not going to get funding under this program. Another key aspect is actually completing registrations. So again, like I said at the top of the presentation, you only really have a couple constants across all the agencies. One of the constants is you have 3 main registrations, which are your DUNS, your SAM, and your SBC control ID. All of these are free. Any registration that you go through is actually free for any of the agencies. Some of them just take time. The Dun & Bradstreet's free. It's online, takes anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. Your SAM registration, though, they put in a new requirement for a notarized letter, so that's probably taking 2 to 4 weeks. That's why you have to make determinations on if you're going to look at SBIR funding quickly whenever the solicitation opens. If you don't already have some of these registrations in hand, some of them can take up to 4 weeks. If you wait till the last minute and you go, well, I didn't know about this, but I'm going to go ahead and apply. It's a week till the date. I don't even have my registrations done, but I can get them done. You're just not going to have time. The next thing you have to do is actually determine that agency and that topic fit. So different agencies have different priorities. Again, someone like Department of Energy is interested in funding energy technology. Someone like USDA is interested in funding food and ag. If you go to USDA with energy technology that's not actually directly related to food and ag, they're probably not going to fund it. Similarly, if you go to Department of Energy with a product or an idea that's actually relying on food or agriculture, if it's not directly producing, renewable energy, they're probably not going to fund it. So what is that agency? What's that topic fit? How can you actually navigate through that process? And that's something that the NMFAST program can actually give you assistance with. And then again, you're going to be creating a proposal package. So it varies on the agency, but almost every single one of them, you're going to have to complete at least some sort of executive summary. So like a one-pager about what the idea is, a technical proposal, which again is anywhere between 15 to 20, I think 15 to 25 pages for a phase one. For a phase two, it can actually be up to 30, I believe, because it just depends on the agency. And a cost proposal. So you're going to have to put together a budget, and you're going to have to justify that budget. So you can't just say, well, you'll fund up to $225,000. I'm going to pay myself $225,000. Well, no. How many hours are you going to devote? How did you actually, arrive at that number? Is there any travel you're going to have to incur? There's things like that that you have to take care of. And another big thing, if you can, get a third-party reviewer to actually look at the proposal. So just like when you're writing a paper for school, it's a lot better if you get an outside view on it, because you'll start to overlook stuff. You've been working on this, you know this, you'll start to actually just skim through paragraphs rather than reading it in depth when you're doing your review. So you might actually have a paragraph that just does not make sense. And the more paragraphs you have like that, the more you're going to impact your chances of securing an award. So have somebody from the outside actually look it over, read through it, make sure that everything looks fine, and make sure that it just makes sense. And then you submit. So don't wait till the last minute to submit. A lot of these are online applications. A lot of them are forms you fill out. You might run into problems at the last minute, which if you did not give yourself enough time, your proposal package will actually be bounced. So if you didn't submit on time, if you forgot a form, even if you don't have the right font size and the right headings, it can actually fail administrative review. And what that means when it fails administrative review is it is returned without review. So all of the work you did is really for naught. Nobody's ever going to look at it. So make sure you're setting yourself up for success. Really think of putting together a proposal like writing a college paper. When you write a term paper, they give you the review criteria, they give you the grading rubric, they say, okay, hit these markers and you're going to get an A. If you only hit 75% of them, you're going to get a B, or whatever that breakdown is. So for each one of these opportunities, they actually publish the review criteria. That is your Bible. That is your grading rubric. You want to get an A, because in this case, getting an A means you're going to get money. They do not fund C's. Unlike the old adage of C's get degrees, it's not the same in this world. And then you're going to wait. So there is always some sort of waiting process, because it actually goes through a review process. They have to make sure that it meets their criteria. They have to make sure that the idea is sound. They have to make sure that the budget actually makes sense and that it's something that can be achieved. So a lot of them, you're going to wait anywhere between 3 and 6 months before they'll make a notification. And as you can see, some of these, there's a lot of registrations. And most of them actually just take a couple registrations. And again, the big thing is all of these registrations are free, and pretty much every single one of them is online. They take maybe 10 to 15 minutes, which it's not a bad idea that if you know there's a couple agencies you're going to look at, go ahead and do the registrations. They never really expire. Some of them you may have to actually, renew your registration like your SAM, but that's on a yearly basis. And your SAM renewal takes probably about 6 minutes if there's no information that's actually changed. So if you think there's even an agency you might look at in the future, go ahead and do the registrations now. It doesn't cost you anything but maybe 15 to 20 minutes of time. And so why is this, interesting to you? Why do you need to know about all the different mechanisms and how there's resources available to help you? Well, and that's where we come in. So the NMFAST program is actually designed to help small businesses get over these hurdles in their SBIR and STTR process. So we're actually funded by the Small Business Administration under what they call the Federal and State Technology Partnership Program. So it's a funding vehicle that they give most of the times to universities, which we're part of New Mexico State University, so that we can help small businesses get their SBIR proposals together so that we can try and grow the economic capital of a region. That's all we're in the business of doing, is trying to help small businesses grow. And that's across any of the Arrowhead Center programs. So that's why all of our services are free. You will never have to, all of the services we operate under FAST are free. All of the assistance we give, all of the tools and resources we've developed, any of the help we give under our FAST banner is always free. And then all 50 states, including the District of Columbia and U.S. territories, can actually apply. This year, there's 24 winners. One of the reasons why you need to know about that is there can be one awardee per state. So for the state of New Mexico, we are the awardee, and that changes each year. And we're actually housed at Arrowhead Center. Again, we offer free SBIR and STTR proposal development assistance and services, but it's throughout the entire state of New Mexico. So you don't need to be in Las Cruces, you don't need to be on campus, you don't need to be a student or a faculty member to make use of our services. If you're a small business and you're looking at the SBIR program, come talk to us. So some of the services we do are things like proposal development assistance, where again, we'll actually match you to a topic and agency. We'll help you create your budget. We'll give you tips and tricks for proposal writing. Really, the only thing we don't do is actually write the proposal for you. Again, because you're the innovator. You're the idea person, you're the entrepreneur, you're the one that came up with the idea. If you asked me to write a proposal on chemical engineering, I could pull a lot of facts off of Wikipedia, but it's going to look like garbage because that's not my wheelhouse. You have to write your own proposal, but we give you a lot of tools and assistance along the way. So we really tailor our services for each client. You're not getting service that you just really can't use. We talk to individuals on an individual basis. We don't go, okay, well, we're going to lump you in with these 12 people that are doing something very similar. No, we look at the opportunities and we look at what is that help you need on a per idea basis. We offer free workshops throughout the state. And another thing, all of our resources are available either on our own website or our YouTube channel, like our video podcast series, where we go through each agency. We talk about what's available. We talk about why you need to know certain aspects and certain facts. And we have a monthly newsletter, which you can sign up through at the very, I believe, in the top banner of our website, which we'll show here in a bit. And our newsletter changes each month. We have a focus each month where we talk about, a service provider we have, or we talk about a business, or we talk about something key that people need to know about. And then we also list a lot of the events that are going on, any of the changes to the agencies you need to be aware of, because these agencies can change their proposal packages every single year. And we talk about what are the open and opening solicitations. So at a glance, you know what you have to be aware of that month. So some of the resources we have available are quick start guides, which are designed as kind of that almost one page. It's a little bit more than one page because it's hard to fit all that information on for each agency. So what are the registrations you need? What are their funding levels? What sort of things do they typically look at? And how do you actually start to move? On our YouTube channel, we actually archive all of our prior workshops. So this workshop itself will actually, our webinar workshop, same thing, will go up on our YouTube channel later on this afternoon as soon as I get done editing the video. And we structure a playlist according to the agency. So we actually have a playlist just for NASA. If you're looking at NASA technologies and you're looking at putting together a SBIR for NASA, you can go to one of our playlists, find out about the registrations, find out about stuff they typically actually fund under, what are their topic areas, and What are their proposal requirements? What do you need to know? What's new? What's interesting? What's novel? Then we also do things like compliance matrices and checklists, which just kind of guide you through that entire proposal development process. If it's your first time developing a proposal, you're probably going to spend 80 to 100 hours to get your first proposal out. But it's a living process, and that's your first proposal. As you get better at the process, that time shrinks. Some people I know that have actually done quite a number of SBIRs, they can crank out a proposal within 18 to 20 hours just because they have all their design criteria ahead of time. They have their workflow. They're using a lot of copy and paste from prior proposals that kind of make sense still, and that they can actually still utilize. Things like their team knowledge, and team base, you might have to just slightly update between proposals. Whereas things like the work plan are going to generally change a lot. If it's not changing a lot, then you're probably not submitting a good proposal. And things like templates, we give you kind of that guidance, that idea about this is what's required in the proposal, this is why it's required, and we not only take out the agency language, but we humanize it. So we'll pull the agency language for a section and paste it in a comment and say, hey, this is what the agency wants. And then we tell you what it actually means in the real world terms. Because anybody that's dealt with government funding and government contracts know that they have their own way of explaining stuff that may be counterintuitive at times. And we have the ability to offer microgrants. This is only for New Mexico-based small businesses. So even though we do provide some level of assistance, sometimes through partner organizations to other states, this is something that we can't offer to a business outside of New Mexico. But microgrants are actually just to help you develop a very specific thing. So if you need to find out what your indirect rate is for a specific proposal, that's something that we have funding available for. Or you need very specific technical guidance and technical review for a particular section of proposal, or for helping to create a particular section of proposal, that's what the microgrant is for. The one thing that they generally can't fund, because it's just a small level of funding, is things like hiring a grant writer to actually write your proposal for you. There are services out there like that, but they usually cost anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000, and they can't guarantee that you're going to win. So this is really just an overview of kind of our process, where we almost take that cradle to the grave approach. We take on any person that actually comes to us with any sort of idea that has a foundation in innovation and is SBIR worthy or SBIR ready. And we take them along a path. We guide them all the way. We'll help you get your registrations done. We'll actually provide you with all the tools, the resources, and we even do review. So if you're creating your proposal and you're writing a section and you just don't know if that particular section talks about or covers all the bases it needs to, or is really something that somebody can read and understand, you can actually send that to us for review. We either review sections, we review the entire proposal. We'll do what we can to help you get funded. So really, in summary, NMFAST tries to assist anybody we can in, one, making sure that your idea is SBIR worthy, two, finding the best fit, and three, giving you all those tools, resources, and support that you need to get this proposal off the ground and to get the idea out. I can tell you from actually being a small business as well, kind of working for a small business, and being on the other side of SBIR proposal development, it can be overwhelming. I am that person that has sat there at 3 a.m. going, oh God, I don't know what the agency is actually looking for at this, and there's no help out there. That's why we publish everything we do on our website. We want to be there. We want to be that guiding force, because we know that this process, frankly, can suck, but it's a valuable process that everybody needs to know about, because it can get you funding when nobody else will. And the biggest thing is it's non-dilutive. You don't have to give up part of your business just to get this funding. So some of the other additional programs, with Arrowhead Center, we do a lot of business accelerator, business development, and entrepreneurial development as well, through things like our sprint and accelerators, which I know a lot of companies and a lot of our clients have actually gone through the sprints, trying to find their commercial opportunity, trying to find their market fit, and trying to do their market validation. There's other agencies and other support organizations across the state. The New Mexico Small Business Assistance Program is a great one. If you don't know about the NMSBA program, they have a website. Just look up New Mexico Small Business Assistance Program, but it's a way for you to work with one of the federal labs to solve a technical problem and solve a specific problem. They're great companion programs because it shows that somebody believes enough in your idea to devote some time and energy to helping you solve it, which looks really good when you're writing a SBIR proposal because the agency reviewer goes, well, somebody else already believed in this and provided them some level of assistance. We should take a look at it too. And one last thing, if there's anyone that actually is interested in funding under DoD or needs some more assistance or is just really interested in more about the SBIR and STTR programs, on December 12th, we're running a one-day event. It's going to be our second year. It's going to have information panels on things like working with primes. It's going to give you opportunity to meet one-on-one with decision makers from Navy, AFRL, and we're trying to actually get NASA to agree to be there now. We ran this event last year. It actually turned out great. It's only a $35 fee for the event. And the website for it is arrowheadcenter.nmsu.edu/innovation summit. Anybody that's interested in learning more about the summit, please send me an email after this. I can answer any and all questions because I am there when we do it and run all the technical stuff, which is always interesting and fun. But I highly recommend this event if you're even slightly interested in the SBIR programs and you want to find out more. There will be a lot of capacity, there will be a lot of capability, and there will be a lot of people that you can meet, match with, network with, and partner with at this event. So again, thank y'all for attending this 1 hour webinar, a little bit over 1 hour, but that's okay. This has really just been about supporting Global Entrepreneurship Week and why entrepreneurs need to know about all the programs that are out there, all the funding opportunities, and everything they need to have, everything they need to know to actually get that support. Where are your support programs at? How can you connect to them? And that's what Arrowhead Center and NMFAST are here to do. So Arrowhead Center is just about supporting business. What can we do to help you? How can we help you take that step? And how can we help you develop that commercial idea and get to the next level? So please feel free to send me any and all emails. Asking me more about the SBIR programs, asking me about some of the other programs that Arrowhead Center runs. We'll be more than happy to put you in touch with whoever can provide you the best level of assistance. Again, I'm Del Mackey. This is my contact information, DELMACKE@ad.nmsu.edu. I'll actually make sure to send this PowerPoint deck out to anybody that registered for the event. Please, again, feel free to email me. And when we post this up on our YouTube channel later, just go to youtube.com and search NMFAST. We should be the first result. You'll actually have this in the description. But again, thank you for attending the webinar. Feel free to email me. We are here to answer anything and everything about the SBIR programs or just about growing your business in New Mexico. Thank you again, and y'all have a wonderful afternoon.